You wouldn't even let me show my solution, but you couldn't solve it, could you? The young janitor's words hung in the air as Professor Whitfield stared at the chalkboard, his academic reputation crumbling before his eyes. What happens when a Harvard professor encounters a mathematical genius disguised as the man who empties his trash? How could a brilliant mind end up pushing a cleaning cart instead of changing the world? And why does this young man refuse to sit down, even when invited to join academia's most exclusive circles? Discover the shocking truth in Harvard professor gave up on the impossible equation, then a janitor boy came and solved it. Don't miss this powerful story of talent ignored, justice delayed, and brilliance that couldn't be suppressed. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published news stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. Professor Richard Whitfield stared at the chalkboard, his knuckles white as he gripped the eraser. 3 months of work, and still nothing. The Keller-Simmons conjecture mocked him from the board, its elegant symbols concealing a maddening complexity that had defeated him once again. Any progress, Richard? Whitfield turned to see Dr. James Thompson, the mathematics department chair, leaning against the doorframe of the lecture hall, arms crossed over his expensive tailored suit. I've tried every approach, James. Every single one. Whitfield threw the eraser down, chalk dust billowing up. The International Mathematics Conference is in 3 months, and I promised a solution. Thompson's smile tightened. The department's reputation is riding on this, Richard. Harvard doesn't accept failure. Don't you think I know that? Whitfield snapped. Princeton's already making noise about their progress. MIT too. Then I suggest you work harder. Thompson straightened his tie. The board expects results, especially from someone with your background. Whitfield bristled at the implication. As the only faculty member from a state school rather than Ivy League, he constantly felt the need to prove himself. The annual funding gala is next week, Thompson continued. Several key donors will be there. It would be advantageous to report progress. After Thompson left, Whitfield returned to the equation. The Keller-Simmons conjecture had stumped mathematicians for decades. Solving it would mean academic immortality, and the security his position at Harvard had never quite provided. His colleagues appeared at the door, ready for the weekly faculty meeting. Still wrestling with that monster? Professor Harrington asked, not bothering to hide his smirk. Perhaps it's simply beyond your reach, Richard, suggested Professor Davis with faux sympathy. As they filed into the lecture hall, Whitfield erased his latest failed attempt. He would return tonight. And tomorrow. And every day until he solved it, or admitted defeat. But failure wasn't an option. Not for Richard Whitfield. Not at Harvard. Marcus Johnson pushed his cleaning cart down the silent corridor of the Harvard Mathematics Building, the squeak of its wheels his only companion at 11 p.m. At 19, he was younger than most of the janitorial staff, but he needed this job, needed it to help Grandma Rose with the bills, to save for the community college courses he couldn't yet afford. Yo Marcus, you got Section C tonight, called Darnell, another janitor. Yeah, man. Professor Whitfield's hall again. Marcus sighed. Dude never cleans up his chalk. That man living there these days. I see him when I leave at midnight, still there when you arrive at 10. Darnell shook his head. Don't let him give you trouble. Marcus nodded and headed toward the lecture hall. As he pushed the cart, he unconsciously shifted his weight to the right, avoiding pressure on his lower left back, a habit formed 2 years ago in Dr. Carter's advanced mathematics class. The memory surfaced unwelcome, standing at the board, solving a complex equation, the satisfaction of the solution flowing through his mind, then Dr. Carter's voice, cold and cutting. Sit down, Mr. Johnson. Stop showing off. But I've solved it, Dr. Carter. Look, I said sit down. Now. He'd sat. And when he questioned her dismissal, she'd yanked him up by his collar and shoved him against the metal edge of the desk. The pain had been immediate, a sharp stab in his lower back that never fully disappeared. The diagnosis, a slipped disc. The school's response, Dr. Carter claimed he'd been disruptive. No witnesses came forward. No consequences followed, except for Marcus, who lost his perfect attendance, his scholarship opportunity, and eventually, his desire to pursue mathematics. Marcus shook off the memory as he entered Whitfield's lecture hall. The room was empty, but the chalkboard was covered with equations. Marcus started his routine, emptying trash bins, vacuuming between rows, always standing, never sitting. He moved to clean the chalkboard but paused at the equation. The Keller-Simmons conjecture. He recognized it from his independent studies years ago. His eyes traced the professor's work, noting the approaches taken, the dead ends, the frustrated erasures. "There's another way," he whispered to himself, then glanced around guiltily. Marcus finished his cleaning, carefully preserving the equations. As he pushed his cart out, he took one last look at the board. For a brief moment, numbers and symbols danced in his mind as they once had, before that day in Dr. Carter's class, before the pain, before he learned to keep his head down. He turned away. That life wasn't for him anymore. Not at Harvard. Not as a janitor. For the next week, Marcus found himself lingering in Whitfield's lecture hall during his shift. The equation on the board changed nightly, new approaches, new dead ends, new frustrations evident in the professor's increasingly chaotic handwriting. Tonight, the hall was empty again. Marcus approached the board, drawn to the mathematical puzzle that had haunted him since he first recognized it. Without thinking, he picked up a piece of chalk. "Just one small correction," he muttered, adding a symbol in a corner where Whitfield had abandoned an approach too quickly. The next night, that corner had been erased. Marcus smiled faintly. The professor had seen it but missed its significance. The approach was sound, but Whitfield hadn't followed it far enough. At home in the small apartment he shared with Grandma Rose, Marcus pulled out his hidden notebook. Unlike his school days when he'd filled dozens with mathematical explorations, this lone notebook contained just a few precious pages of work. He hadn't been able to give up mathematics entirely. "You working on numbers again?" Grandma Rose appeared in his doorway, her nurse's scrubs wrinkled from her night shift. "Just thinking about something I saw," Marcus replied, quickly closing the notebook. "Your father had that same look when he was solving something," she said quietly. Like the whole world disappeared. Marcus's father had been a community college mathematics instructor before the car accident that took both his parents. The memory was both sweet and painful. "You know, I've always said, baby, that gift of yours is God-given. No teacher can take it away. No injury can erase it." "It's not that easy, Grandma," Marcus said, rubbing his back involuntarily. "I never said easy. I said possible." She sat on his bed, wincing at her own aches from a lifetime of physical work. "When that woman hurt you, she took more than your scholarship. She took your confidence. But she couldn't take what's in here." She tapped his forehead. Later that night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He pulled out his notebook again and sketched the Keller-Simmons conjecture from memory. His mind raced through possibilities, approaches that Whitfield hadn't tried. The next day, exhausted but wired, Marcus arrived at work early. He slipped into the empty lecture hall and studied Whitfield's latest attempt. The professor had gone down another blind alley. Without allowing himself to think about the consequences, Marcus picked up the chalk and wrote in a small corner of the board, "Consider non-Euclidean implications." It was a suggestion so subtle that only someone who understood the problem would recognize its significance. Marcus stepped back, heart racing. What was he doing? If caught, he'd lose his job. But the mathematics called to him, like a language he'd been forbidden to speak but still dreamed in. For 2 hours after finishing his shift, instead of heading home, Marcus sat on the floor of the hallway outside the lecture hall, his back against the wall, a mathematics textbook borrowed from the janitor's closet open on his lap. The same book he'd hidden there months ago, part of a small collection donated to the maintenance staff but never claimed. Through the cracked door, he could hear Whitfield pacing, muttering, occasionally exclaiming in frustration. Marcus smiled faintly. The professor would see it eventually, the path forward hidden in plain sight. As dawn broke, Marcus finally headed home, his mind still swimming with equations. For the first time in 2 years, the familiar ache in his back seemed less important than the awakening in his mind. 3 nights later, Marcus entered the lecture hall to find Professor Whitfield still there, surrounded by crumpled papers, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, tie askew. "Sorry, Professor. I can come back later," Marcus said, already backing toward the door. Whitfield barely glanced up. "Just clean around me. I won't be leaving anytime soon." Marcus nodded and began his routine, keeping his distance from the professor. As he emptied the trash bin overflowing with discarded approaches, he couldn't help glancing at the board. Whitfield had followed the non-Euclidean suggestion but taken a wrong turn halfway through. A small gasp escaped Marcus before he could stop himself. "Is something amusing you?" Whitfield's voice cut through the silence. "No, sir." "Sorry, sir." "Then why are you staring at my work instead of doing your job?" The professor's eyes narrowed. "Wait. You've been in here before, haven't you?" Marcus clutched his broom tighter. "Yes, sir. I clean this hall every night." Whitfield stood up suddenly. "Have you been writing on my board?" The accusation hung in the air. Marcus felt a familiar tightness in his chest, the same feeling he'd had in Dr. Carter's classroom when she dismissed his solution. "I asked you a question, janitor." I just noticed something about the equation," Marcus admitted. Whitfield's face darkened. "You noticed something? About the Keller-Simmons conjecture? One of the most complex mathematical problems of our time. There's an alternative approach using non-Euclidean." "Enough." Whitfield slammed his hand on the desk. "Who put you up to this? Was it Harrington? Or Davis? They think this is funny." "Nobody, sir. You expect me to believe a janitor understands advanced theoretical mathematics?" Whitfield laughed bitterly. "Next you'll tell me you've solved it." Marcus straightened despite the pain in his back. "Not yet. But your approach in the lower quadrant is promising if you extend the get out." Whitfield's face was red now. "Get out before I call security and have you fired for tampering with faculty work." The commotion drew attention. 2 other janitors appeared at the door, along with a young Asian woman carrying textbooks. "What's happening?" one of the janitors asked. "This person claims to understand my equation," Whitfield sneered. "Probably copying symbols without comprehending, planning to steal my work." "Marcus wouldn't do that," the janitor defended. "He's a good kid." "It's fine," Marcus said quietly, the familiar weight of resignation settling on him. "I'm sorry for the disturbance, Professor." As Marcus pushed his cart toward the door, the young woman with the textbooks gave him a curious look. Their eyes met briefly before he looked away, embarrassment burning his cheeks. Behind him, he heard Whitfield muttering about increased security and keeping unqualified personnel away from sensitive research. The words followed Marcus down the corridor, echoing Dr. Carter's dismissal years ago. Different place, different person, same message: mathematics wasn't for people like him. "Hey! Wait up!" Marcus turned to see the young Asian woman from the lecture hall hurrying toward him, her arms full of textbooks. "I'm Sophia Chen, Professor Mitchell's grad student," she said, shifting books to extend her hand. "What was that about back there?" Marcus hesitated. "Nothing. Just a misunderstanding." Sophia tilted her head skeptically. "Didn't sound like nothing." Whitfield mentioned the Keller-Simmons conjecture. "I should get back to work," Marcus replied, turning to his cart. "Wait." Sophia stepped into his path. "Were you really looking at his equation?" Marcus sighed. "I was cleaning the board and noticed some errors in his approach. It was stupid to say anything." "You understand the Keller-Simmons conjecture?" Her eyebrows rose. "Some of it, he admitted reluctantly. Sophia studied him for a moment. I'm in the mathematics department lounge most evenings. 5th floor, East Wing. If you're interested, I have some books that might help with some of it. Before Marcus could respond, she walked away, leaving him confused by the unexpected offer. 2 days passed before curiosity overcame caution. Marcus finished his shift early and made his way to the 5th floor. Through the lounge door's window, he could see Sophia surrounded by books and a laptop. She smiled when she saw him. I was hoping you'd come. I'm Sophia. Marcus. Sit down, Marcus. He shook his head. I prefer standing. If she found this odd, she didn't comment. Instead, she pushed a book toward him. Advanced Non-Euclidean Geometry. I thought you might find it useful. Marcus hesitated. Why are you helping me? Because Whitfield is brilliant but arrogant, and I'm curious about someone who cleans floors by night and apparently understands theoretical mathematics. She shrugged. Plus, the department could use some diversity of thought. For the next hour, they discussed the Keller-Simmons conjecture. Marcus was cautious at first, but Sophia's genuine interest drew him out. You're self-taught, she asked incredulously after he explained a particularly complex concept. Mostly. I had some good teachers before. He trailed off. Before what? Marcus shifted his weight, pain flaring in his back. Before I learned mathematics wasn't for everyone. Something in his tone made Sophia drop the subject. Instead, she offered him more books. Borrow these. Return them whenever. As Marcus left with the precious books, a small flame of hope flickered to life. Maybe there was still a place for him in the world of numbers after all. Professor Whitfield stared at the email from the conference committee, his stomach churning. 2 weeks until the International Mathematics Conference, and he was no closer to solving the Keller-Simmons conjecture than when he'd started. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Thompson entered without waiting for a response. The board is concerned, Richard, Thompson said without preamble. Harvard's reputation. I'm aware of what's at stake, Whitfield snapped. Are you? Princeton announced yesterday that their team is making significant progress. MIT claimed a breakthrough approach. Thompson's voice hardened. Meanwhile, Harvard's representative is holed up in his office with nothing to show but chalk dust and excuses. The words stung precisely as intended. Whitfield had come from a modest background, fought his way into academic circles dominated by old money and older names. Every day was a battle to prove he belonged. I need more time, Whitfield insisted. You don't have it. Either solve the equation or withdraw from the conference. Thompson headed for the door. And Richard? The committee is watching. Your tenure review is coming up. The threat hung in the air long after Thompson left. Meanwhile, Marcus sat alone in the maintenance break room, Sophia's books spread before him. The Keller-Simmons conjecture had consumed his thoughts for weeks now. He'd filled 2 notebooks with approaches, calculations, dead ends, and promising paths. He'd continued leaving small notes on Whitfield's board, watching as the professor incorporated them without acknowledgement, sometimes following them to new insights, sometimes misinterpreting them into new dead ends. A sharp pain lanced through Marcus's back as he shifted position. The familiar ache triggered an equally painful memory. He was 16 again, standing at the board in Dr. Carter's advanced placement class, the solution flowing through him like music as he wrote the final steps of a complex proof. That's impossible, Dr. Carter had said, her voice cold. You copied this from somewhere. No, ma'am. I figured it out last night. See, if you apply the theorem from chapter. Sit down, Mr. Johnson. The classroom had gone silent. But I haven't finished explaining. I said sit down. Her voice had risen. Stop showing off. Nobody likes a cheater. Humiliated, he'd returned to his desk, confusion and hurt burning in his chest. When the bell rang, she'd called him back. Where did you copy that solution from? I didn't copy it, Dr. Carter. I solved it myself. Her eyes had narrowed. Boys from your neighborhood don't solve equations like that. When he tried to defend himself, she grabbed his collar, yanking him up. You're making a mockery of my classroom. She'd shoved him hard against the desk edge. The pain had been immediate and blinding. He'd slumped to the floor, unable to stand. Get up. Stop being dramatic. But he couldn't. The school nurse had called an ambulance. The diagnosis, slipped disc and nerve compression. The school investigation that followed accepted Dr. Carter's version. Marcus had been disruptive, then injured himself falling while running out of the classroom. No witnesses contradicted her. His scholarship opportunity vanished along with his academic future. Marcus shook off the memory as his phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Whitfield's having a meltdown. Conference in 2 weeks. Still stuck. Marcus closed his notebook. He'd nearly solved it, found a path through the mathematical labyrinth that Whitfield kept missing. But what was the point? Who would believe a janitor with a GED and a bad back had solved what Harvard's finest couldn't? Yet the equation called to him, a puzzle asking to be completed. That night, as he cleaned Whitfield's empty lecture hall, he stared at the board covered with increasingly desperate attempts. In the bottom corner, barely visible, the professor had written, "Impossible." Marcus picked up the chalk, hesitated, then set it down again. Some doors weren't meant for people like him to open. Dr. Carter had made that perfectly clear. The solution came to Marcus at 3 a.m., jolting him from a restless sleep. He scrambled for his notebook, ignoring the familiar ache in his back as he furiously scribbled equations. The approach was unexpected, combining elements of topology with the non-Euclidean framework he'd been exploring. By dawn, he was certain. He had solved the Keller-Simmons conjecture. For hours, he checked and double-checked his work, testing every step, verifying every conclusion. The solution held. It was elegant, surprising, and undeniably correct. He called Sophia, voice shaking with excitement. "I've got it," he said when she answered. "The whole thing. The Keller-Simmons. You're sure?" "Positive. Can we meet?" 30 minutes later, they sat in a quiet corner of the campus coffee shop. Sophia examined his solution, her expression shifting from skepticism to amazement. Marcus, this is brilliant," she whispered. "The application of topological constraints within non-Euclidean parameters. I've never seen anything like it. It works, right? I'm not missing something. It more than works. It's elegant." She looked up at him. "What are you going to do with it?" The question hung between them. Marcus hadn't thought beyond solving the puzzle. "What do you mean?" "This solution is worth publishing. It's groundbreaking. It could launch a career in mathematics." Marcus laughed bitterly. "A career? I'm a janitor with a GED." "With a solution to one of mathematics' most challenging problems," Sophia countered. "You need to show this to someone. Professor Mitchell would." "No." Marcus's voice was firm. "No professors." "Then what? Let Whitfield fail publicly when the solution is right here." She tapped his notebook. That evening, Marcus visited his grandmother, his mind still churning with Sophia's question. "Something troubling you, baby?" Grandma Rose asked, noticing his distraction. Marcus hesitated, then told her everything, the equation, the solution, his dilemma. "That Dr. Carter took a lot from you," Grandma Rose said when he finished. "Your confidence. Your scholarship. But she didn't take your gift. She took his hands in hers. Your father used to say mathematics was about truth. Not who finds it, just that it's found." "What should I do, Grandma?" "What feels right in your heart, not what fear tells you to do." Later that night, Marcus made his decision. He carefully copied his solution onto 3 pages, leaving no name, no identifying information. Just the pure mathematics of his answer. Before his shift ended at dawn, he slipped into Whitfield's lecture hall and placed the pages on the professor's desk, anchoring them with a piece of chalk. Then he quietly left, his heartbeat echoing in his ears. Walking home in the early morning light, Marcus felt lighter than he had in years. Whether Whitfield used the solution or not, the mathematics was complete. The truth was found. For now, that was enough. Professor Whitfield dragged himself into his lecture hall, exhaustion weighing on him like a physical burden. 10 days until the conference, and he was no closer to a solution. Thompson's ultimatum echoed in his mind: solve it or withdraw. He dropped his briefcase on the desk, dislodging some papers that fluttered to the floor. Annoyed, he bent to retrieve them, then froze as he recognized equations that weren't his. 3 pages of meticulous work. Whitfield snatched them up, eyes darting over the symbols and calculations. His heart began to race. This approach, combining topology with non-Euclidean geometry, he'd never considered it. But as he followed the logical progression, his excitement mounted. This could work, he muttered, rushing to the board to verify the steps. This could actually work. For 2 hours, Whitfield checked and rechecked the solution, testing it against every known constraint of the Keller-Simmons conjecture. The solution held. It was brilliant. Revolutionary. And it hadn't come from him. Dr. Thompson found him still at the board, surrounded by verification calculations. "I've solved it," Whitfield announced without preamble. Thompson's eyebrows rose. "The Keller-Simmons? You're certain?" "Absolutely. The approach is unorthodox but elegant. Combines topological constraints within a non-Euclidean framework. I won't pretend to understand that, but I trust your judgment." Thompson smiled for the first time in weeks. "This calls for celebration. The department will be thrilled." As Thompson turned to leave, Whitfield felt a pang of conscience. "James, wait. I should clarify." The door opened before he could finish, admitting Professors Davis and Harrington. "Thompson says you've cracked the Keller-Simmons," Harrington said, his earlier smugness replaced with grudging respect. "Impressive work, Richard." The solution was. Whitfield hesitated, the anonymous pages heavy in his hand. Who had left them? A colleague? A student? Unexpected, he finished lamely. "Well, unexpected or not, it couldn't have come at a better time," Davis said. "Princeton just announced they're withdrawing their presentation on the Keller-Simmons. Couldn't solve it after all." "We need to verify your solution, of course," Thompson added. "Standard procedure. We'll convene the department this afternoon." After they left, Whitfield stared at the anonymous pages. The professional recognition he'd craved was within reach. All he had to do was present this solution as his own. But the mathematics itself demanded honesty. Who had solved what he couldn't? The handwriting was unfamiliar, neat but not formal, suggesting someone without classical training. That afternoon, Whitfield presented the solution to the mathematics department. The reception was overwhelmingly positive, with colleagues praising his ingenuity and unconventional approach. "I always knew you had it in you, Richard," Thompson said afterward, clapping him on the shoulder. The words should have felt like victory. Instead, they tasted like ash. That evening, he returned to his lecture hall to find Professor Diana Mitchell examining his board, where he'd written out the solution. "Fascinating approach," she commented without turning around. "Not at all what I'd expect from you, Richard." Something in her tone made him pause. "What do you mean?" "Your work has always been methodical, traditional. This." She gestured to the board, "This shows a fresh perspective, unconstrained by conventional academic thinking." "People can surprise you," he said defensively. "Indeed they can." Mitchell turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "I saw something interesting the other night. A janitor and my graduate student, Sophia, discussing advanced mathematics in the department lounge." Whitfield felt a chill. "What are you suggesting?" "Nothing yet. But I noticed the young man never sat down, despite their long conversation. Seemed to be in pain. Back problems, perhaps. She headed for the door, then paused. Just an observation. Congratulations on your solution, Richard. After she left, Whitfield sank into his chair, the implication of her words clear. Could a janitor have solved what had defeated him? Impossible. Yet doubt crept in. He remembered the night he'd caught the janitor looking at his board. The young man had said something about an alternative approach. Whitfield pulled out the anonymous solution again, studying it with new eyes. The handwriting, the slightly unconventional notation, not from someone with formal mathematical training, but someone with natural brilliance. The truth dawned slowly, then all at once. He hadn't solved the Keller-Simmons conjecture. A janitor had. The morning of the departmental presentation arrived, and Whitfield had barely slept. Ethical dilemmas had plagued him all night. Should he confess that the solution wasn't his? Would anyone even believe the truth? As he gathered his materials, Sophia Chen appeared in his doorway. Professor Whitfield, do you have a moment? I'm rather busy, Miss Chen. The presentation. It's about the Keller-Simmons solution, she interrupted. I know it's not yours. Whitfield froze. That's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation, it's a fact. Sophia's gaze was steady. Marcus Johnson solved it. The janitor? Whitfield couldn't hide his disbelief. That's absurd. Is it? Check the security cameras from 3 nights ago. You'll see him leaving the solution on your desk. Whitfield's mind raced. If this got out, his career would be over. Even if what you're saying is true, which I don't concede, why would a mathematical genius be working as a janitor? Because people like you and Dr. Elaine Carter decided he didn't belong in mathematics. Dr. Carter? The high school teacher who's joining our department next semester. Sophia nodded. She physically injured Marcus when he was her student, damaged his back permanently. Then made sure he lost his scholarship opportunities. All because she couldn't accept that a black student from a poor neighborhood could be a mathematical prodigy. Whitfield felt sick. What do you want from me? Give Marcus credit for his solution. He deserves it. And if I refuse? Then I show the security footage to Dr. Thompson and the board. Her voice softened. Professor, you've built your career on honesty in mathematics. Don't throw that away now. After she left, Whitfield sat motionless, the weight of his decision crushing him. His phone buzzed with a text from Thompson, auditorium filling up. Where are you? The departmental presentation was scheduled to start in 20 minutes. Everyone who mattered in Harvard's mathematics community would be there, plus representatives from the International Mathematics Conference. Whitfield gathered his papers and headed toward the auditorium, still undecided. As he approached, he saw Marcus pushing his cleaning cart down a side corridor. Mr. Johnson, he called. Marcus turned, his expression guarded. Professor. I'd like you to attend the departmental presentation today. I'm working, sir. Consider it part of your job. Whitfield met his eyes. I insist. Confusion crossed Marcus's face, but he nodded cautiously. In the auditorium, Whitfield took his place at the podium, surveying the crowd. Thompson and the board members sat in the front row. His colleagues filled the middle section. And at the very back, Marcus stood against the wall, looking uncomfortable. Ladies and gentlemen, Whitfield began, I've called this presentation to discuss the Keller-Simmons conjecture, which has been the focus of my work for the past several months. He proceeded to outline the problem, aware of Thompson's approving nods, of Davis and Harrington's reluctant attention, of Marcus shifting his weight in the back of the room. The solution, Whitfield continued, came from an unexpected direction. A brilliant application of topological principles within a non-Euclidean framework. He paused, his career hanging on his next words. A solution I did not discover. A murmur ran through the audience. Thompson's smile froze. Mathematics is about truth, Whitfield said, echoing words he didn't know had come from Marcus's father. Not who finds it, just that it's found. He looked directly at Marcus. The Keller-Simmons conjecture has been solved not by me, but by Marcus Johnson, who currently works as a member of our maintenance staff. The room erupted in confused whispers. Thompson half rose from his seat, face darkening. "Mr. Johnson," Whitfield called over the noise, "would you please come forward and explain your solution?" All eyes turned to Marcus, who stood frozen in shock, his face a mixture of disbelief and fear. The silence in the auditorium was deafening as Marcus slowly made his way to the front, every step painful both physically and emotionally. Years of being told he didn't belong in spaces like this warred with the mathematical certainty that his solution was correct. Professor Whitfield stepped aside, offering Marcus the podium. The gesture was both invitation and challenge. "Prove yourself," it seemed to say. "This is absurd." Dr. Thompson stood up, his voice cutting through the tension. "Richard, what kind of stunt are you pulling?" "It's not a stunt, James," Whitfield replied. "Mr. Johnson left the solution on my desk 3 nights ago. I verified it independently. It's correct and original. You expect us to believe a janitor solved what our department couldn't?" Professor Davis scoffed. Marcus gripped the podium, pain flaring in his back. The familiar feeling of dismissal washed over him, the same feeling from Dr. Carter's classroom years ago. "Perhaps Mr. Johnson can settle this himself," Professor Mitchell suggested from her seat. "If he indeed solved the conjecture, he should be able to explain his approach." All eyes turned to Marcus. He glanced at Sophia, who gave him an encouraging nod. Taking a deep breath, Marcus began to explain. Hesitant at first, then with growing confidence, he outlined his solution, filling the board with equations. The mathematical language that had been denied him for so long flowed freely now. As he worked, the skeptical murmurs from the audience gradually subsided, replaced by attentive silence and occasional sounds of surprise or appreciation. The key insight, Marcus explained, was recognizing that within a non-Euclidean framework, the topological constraints actually simplify rather than complicate the relationship between these variables. He continued for 20 minutes, lost in the pure joy of mathematics. When he finished, the room remained silent. Professor Mitchell was the first to speak. "That was remarkable, Mr. Johnson." Others began to nod in agreement, the academic appreciation of a beautiful solution overcoming their initial prejudice. Dr. Thompson, however, remained skeptical. "While impressive, this doesn't explain how a janitor with no formal training could solve such a complex problem." "I had formal training," Marcus countered. "Advanced placement mathematics through high school. I was on track for a scholarship until..." The auditorium door opened, interrupting him. A woman in a tailored suit entered, and Marcus froze mid-sentence. "Dr. Elaine Carter." "I apologize for being late," she announced, approaching the front. "My flight was delayed." She stopped abruptly when she saw Marcus, recognition and then alarm crossing her face. "What is he doing here?" she demanded. "Dr. Carter," Thompson greeted her. "You're just in time for an unusual situation. This young man claims to have solved the Keller-Simmons conjecture." "Marcus Johnson?" Carter laughed dismissively. "Impossible. He was my student years ago. Disruptive, prone to exaggeration. He copied work and passed it off as his own." The familiar accusations hit Marcus like physical blows. But this time, he stood his ground. "I never copied anything, Dr. Carter. You just couldn't accept that a black kid from my neighborhood could understand mathematics better than you taught it." Carter's face hardened. "How dare you? Is it true you physically assaulted Mr. Johnson in your classroom?" Professor Mitchell interrupted, her voice sharp. "What? No, of course not. He fell. After you shoved him against a desk," Sophia interjected, stepping forward. "Causing a slipped disc that still gives him pain. That's why he never sits down, Dr. Carter. That's the real reason he's a janitor instead of a mathematics student." Carter sputtered denials, but uncertainty rippled through the room. "These are serious allegations," Thompson said, looking troubled. They're more than allegations, Sophia replied. I've been researching since Marcus told me his story. I found 3 former students willing to confirm what happened. They were too afraid to speak up then, but they will now. Professor Whitfield stepped forward. The mathematics speaks for itself. Mr. Johnson's solution is elegant, original, and correct. Whatever his background, whatever brought him to work as a janitor in our department, the fact remains, he solved what none of us could. Marcus stood tall despite the pain in his back, facing Dr. Carter. Years of hurt, of suppressed talent, of opportunities denied, all crystallized in this moment of vindication. You told me boys from my neighborhood don't solve equations like that, he said quietly. You were wrong. The week following the revelation was a whirlwind for Marcus. The mathematics department convened an emergency meeting to verify his solution and credentials. His old school records were retrieved, showing stellar performance until his abrupt academic decline following the incident with Dr. Carter. Sophia's investigation yielded more than she had initially revealed: 3 former students who had witnessed Dr. Carter's assault on Marcus, plus documentation of similar incidents with other minority students. The witnesses had submitted written statements, breaking years of silence. Now Marcus sat in Dr. Thompson's office, still standing despite the comfortable chair offered to him. Grandma Rose sat beside him, her hands folded calmly in her lap, though her eyes held a fierce pride. Mr. Johnson, Thompson began formally, after thorough verification, the department confirms your solution to the Keller-Simmons conjecture is both original and correct. It represents a significant contribution to mathematics. Thank you, sir, Marcus replied. As for the other matter, Thompson continued, less comfortably, the university has rescinded Dr. Carter's appointment. The evidence of her past behavior makes her unsuitable for a position at Harvard. Grandma Rose nodded approvingly but remained silent. Professor Whitfield has requested to present your solution at the International Mathematics Conference, with full credit to you as the author. Do you consent to this arrangement? Yes, sir. Thompson leaned forward. Now, Mr. Johnson, we come to the matter of your future. Professor Mitchell has reviewed your mathematical knowledge and believes you operate at a graduate level despite your lack of formal degree. Marcus has always had a gift, Grandma Rose interjected. Even as a little boy. His father, my son, was the same way. Thompson acknowledged her with a nod. Harvard would like to offer you a special admission to our undergraduate program, with full scholarship, followed by fast-tracking to graduate studies if you maintain academic excellence. Marcus blinked, unable to fully process the words. That's. You deserve it, baby, Grandma Rose said softly. Your father would be so proud. There's also the matter of compensation, Thompson continued. Your solution has significant real-world applications. The department wishes to establish a research grant in your name, with substantial funding. I don't need, you do, Thompson cut him off. Talent like yours shouldn't be mopping floors, Mr. Johnson. It should be solving problems that benefit humanity. Later that day, Marcus found Professor Whitfield waiting outside Thompson's office. Mr. Johnson, Marcus, I owe you an apology, Whitfield said. I nearly took credit for your work. Worse, I dismissed you based on your position, not your abilities. You made it right in the end, Marcus replied. That counts for something. Not enough. Whitfield looked genuinely troubled. I've spent my career fighting to be respected despite coming from a non-elite background. Then I nearly did the same thing to you, but worse. Why did you change your mind? Because mathematics is about truth. Whitfield smiled slightly. And because Professor Mitchell pointed out security cameras exist. Marcus couldn't help but laugh. I'd like to mentor you, Whitfield offered. If you're willing. Your approach to mathematics is unlike anything I've seen. Fresh, uninhibited by conventional thinking. I believe we could learn from each other. For the first time in years, Marcus felt a burden lifting. Not just the vindication of his talent, but the possibility of belonging in the world he had always loved. I think I'd like that, he said. 6 months later, Marcus stood outside the Harvard Mathematics building, no longer in janitor's clothes but dressed in jeans and a button-down shirt, a backpack slung over his shoulder. His first semester as an undergraduate had begun a week ago, though his coursework was a specially designed combination of advanced topics that acknowledged his unusual background and abilities. "Ready for Professor Mitchell's seminar?" Sophia asked, falling into step beside him. "As I'll ever be," Marcus replied with a smile. They entered the building together, passing the janitorial closet where his cleaning cart had once been stored. Darnell waved as they passed. "Still weird seeing you on the other side, man," Darnell called. "Good weird, I hope," Marcus answered. "The best kind." The Keller-Simmons solution had made waves beyond Harvard. The International Mathematics Conference had featured it prominently, with Professor Whitfield presenting Marcus's work to academic acclaim. 3 prestigious mathematics journals had published papers about various aspects of the approach. And Marcus had received inquiries from research institutions around the world. But perhaps the most meaningful change had been more personal. After months of medical treatment funded by his research grant, Marcus's back pain had diminished significantly. The injury would never fully heal, but specialized therapy had made it manageable. He entered Professor Mitchell's classroom and, for the first time since high school, took a seat without pain shooting up his spine. Such a small thing, yet it symbolized everything that had changed. Professor Whitfield entered, nodding at Marcus with the easy familiarity of their now regular mentoring sessions. Behind him came Dr. Thompson and several other faculty members, along with someone carrying a camera. "What's going on?" Marcus whispered to Sophia. "You'll see," she replied mysteriously. Professor Mitchell called the class to order. "Before we begin today's seminar, we have a special announcement. Harvard University is establishing a new initiative aimed at identifying and supporting mathematical talent in underserved communities." She gestured to Marcus. Inspired by recent events, the program will provide resources, mentorship, and educational pathways for exceptional students who might otherwise be overlooked by traditional academic systems. Dr. Thompson stepped forward. "We're calling it the Johnson Initiative for Mathematical Excellence. Marcus, would you say a few words?" Stunned, Marcus made his way to the front of the room, aware of the camera recording the moment. He thought of his father, who had taught community college mathematics until his death. Of Grandma Rose, who had always believed in his gift. Of the long journey from Dr. Carter's classroom to this moment. "Mathematics isn't about who you are or where you come from," he said simply. "It's about seeing patterns and possibilities that others miss. There are brilliant minds in every neighborhood, every background, every circumstance. They just need someone to recognize that brilliance instead of dismissing it." He looked around the classroom, at Sophia, who had befriended him when he was just a janitor, at Professor Whitfield, who had chosen truth over prestige, at Professor Mitchell, who had seen his potential when others saw only his position. "I'm grateful for this initiative and honored by its name. But I'm most excited about who we'll discover next, whose equation will change our understanding, whose solution will solve what seems impossible." After the ceremony, as the classroom emptied, Marcus remained seated, savoring the simple ability to do so without pain. Professor Whitfield approached, carrying a small wrapped package. "A gift," he explained, "to commemorate your first official semester." Inside was a beautiful mahogany box containing new chalk, not the standard classroom variety, but high-quality, specialized mathematician's chalk. "For your next impossible equation," Whitfield said with a smile. Marcus ran his fingers over the smooth cylinders, thinking of the journey from cleaning boards to writing on them. From being dismissed to being celebrated. From hiding his gift to sharing it with the world. "Thank you, Professor," he said. "I think I have a few ideas already." As he left the building that afternoon, Marcus paused to look up at Harvard's imposing facade. Once a place where he had felt invisible except when he was being accused, now a place where he belonged. The impossible equation had been solved. And with it, his own life's equation had found a new solution too. Dear friend, behind every person is a story we don't fully know. This tale reminds us that brilliance exists everywhere, in every neighborhood, every background, every circumstance, waiting for the opportunity to shine. When we judge others based on their current position rather than their potential, we don't just harm them, we rob the world of their gifts. Let's create a society where talent is nurtured regardless of where it's found, where past injuries don't determine future opportunities, and where truth ultimately prevails. If this message resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to support more stories that challenge our assumptions and open our hearts. Together, we can recognize the genius in unexpected places.